to Apropos, the show about Clojure, where we have a guest and we have some questions for them. So before we introduce our special guest, let's introduce our panel. We have Ray,
Hello.
Mia,
Hello.
I'm Eric, and our special guest is David
Guest,
Nolen.
and we have some questions for them.
Hi.
All right. So, David, we do have some questions for you. Let me pull them up here. Our first question is, can we see your editor setup?
Yes, let's see if I can make this work. This is my typical setup when I'm working on ClojureScript. I think Ray already called me out on the fact that I'm on Clojure 110. But it
Oh,
goes to show you
wow.
that it doesn't really,
I
for Clojure.
can't. Where is it, by the way? I
What
can't
what
see it.
version of Java are you running?
I have 24 installed on this machine.
Mm.
But for ClojureScript development, it doesn't really matter. Like
Hmm.
honestly, like the version of Clojure doesn't matter so much. And yeah, definitely very nothing about the JVM either. But for work, I tend to use more recent stuff. But for ClojureScript, it's not so important.
Yeah.
And then I don't use Emacs itself for
Editing
actual
Clojure?
Clojure dev. I
Mm.
just use it because of org mode. So it's still, I sort of
Uh,
got into org mode years ago. I'm not even an org mode expert, but I still like it,
yeah.
like as a way to write things down when I'm working on something.
So you take notes, to-do lists, that kind of stuff?
It's more like, what was I doing? Because I'm busier these days than I used to be. So like I'm not always able to focus on ClojureScript for like large contiguous periods of time. So I'll be like, I have to write down what I was doing, otherwise I'll forget.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there's a bit of that. There's also as I progress, like maybe my ideas change. Maybe I'm like, okay, this is a terrible thing I tried to do. I write down why it was terrible, and I start writing notes for like the next idea.
got it.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Can we see your screen?
Oh, can you not see this?
Oh,
No.
no.
Are you not sharing?
Oh, hold on. I'm so sorry. I need to actually share, right? Okay, here we go. So yeah, so here is, can you see it now?
Nope.
No.
You can't see it.
No.
No.
Why is
Do
that?
you need to approve screen sharing?
Oh, wait,
Uh,
wait, 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 wait. Here I did. I did it. I
Ah, here
did
we
it.
there,
go. Yeah.
yeah,
There we go.
okay.
There we go.
Uh, there
Now
it
you can
is.
see it.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yay. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes. So yeah, I'm using IntelliJ and Cursive. I've been using that, I think now for 10 years. Like since I joined Cognitect in like 2014, and I think around that time I started using Cursive.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
back when I was at Cognitect. Um, so yeah, long time Cursive user. I like it. I use Emacs bindings. For me, I really made the jump when for people who do Emacs stuff, they have a pretty good transient mark mode simulation, which was to me was like why I didn't use it before. But then once IntelliJ added transient mark mode, I was like, okay, I can make the switch. It won't drive me crazy. And then in this window, I have Emacs, which again, like I said, I don't use it for dev, but like, I use it for like note taking,
Okay.
thought process stuff.
And so do you often have it side by side like that while you're editing, while you're
Yeah.
coding?
Yep. So I'll do some editing here, I'll do some REPL stuff, and then something will happen, and then I'll write down some notes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Just going back, David, what were you calling this mode? I
The
kind of
transient mark mode?
Transient
what
mark mode in Emacs, it's
what is
so
that?
so you do controls. I mean, you can bind to whatever, but I think it's default control space, but then the mark is set and then you're in selection mode and then all of your other movement commands affect the mark. But that's awesome. And once you get used to it, you don't have to mouse for selection. And I,
Right.
like I learned how to do that. Like, I don't know, that was like 2008 or seven. So like, I'm just so used to it. And if I don't have it in an editor, it makes me crazy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was really what kept me from IntelliJ until IntelliJ got it, and I was like, okay, I'll switch over because they had ParEdit was great in IntelliJ, and there's really just this one other Emacs feature, like and then over here, like transient mark mode. Once you get used to it, it's I don't know. It's how I edit text.
Yeah,
But
it's so
just
much better
just
than having to like hold shift and
Now holding shift, it's like
it's
no
the
way.
caveman. Yeah.
It's
well, maybe I'm getting confused here though, because like what I do in Clojure is I use this like shrink and expand selection.
yeah,
Because
that's
is that the same kind of thing, or this seems a
it's no,
little bit more
it's
advanced? Yeah.
this is more advanced because none of once you've set the mark, all your normal movement commands work. So I can do a page up, page down, scroll, all that stuff works while
Hmm.
you're in the transient mark mode. So there's no alterations to your movements. And so that's really key, right? That it's not a specific thing. It's like whatever my key bindings are, they are unchanged in transient
Yeah,
mark
you
mode.
don't have to learn a whole new set of
No,
keystrokes.
just to modify the selection. There's no thing, right? There's no specific selection commands. I just start the selection and then I just do regular key bindings.
Ah, okay, because that strikes me, and again, everyone. I mean, God knows, I don't know. I've never heard of this mode before, so I'm fascinated. Um,
Yeah, I mean, there's
but
other
like,
things like I don't know if
I,
this is gonna work. Actually, it might not work. But yeah, for example, like there's a neat thing like I just haven't set the binding here, but like in Emacs, did this thing where you could go. It doesn't matter where you are inside the form. If I did Option
Mhm.
H, it would automatically find the highest, the top level wrapping form. So that was really
oh
cool for
right,
like
okay, yeah,
so you could be anywhere inside, and like Option H
yeah,
would select the wrapping form. But for example, in when you're editing text, Option H selects the paragraph. So that's really cool, right? So
Mhm.
it's like again, you have all these bindings in different modes, and
mm,
again,
mm.
they all work. And it's transient mark mode is sort of orthogonal to whatever the particular bindings mean in a particular mode.
Right, okay, right. Yeah, it's like a bit of a like a power that I didn't know was possible. So it's always nice to have that kind of like understanding. Yeah. Okay, cool. Transient mark mode. Fucking hell. Today I learned.
Um, wow. So this is it sounds like Ray was saying this is a pretty old IntelliJ. Is that true?
No, 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 no,
Old
no.
No,
version?
No,
no,
this is
no.
Oh,
The
no.
old
Clojure
version of
version.
Clojure.
Old
Yeah,
version of Clojure,
yeah, yeah,
1.10. I'm pretty sure
yeah,
it's there in the depths Eden or something. Yeah, 1.10.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean the thing that's fascinating to me is that I remember I talked to the cursive developer Colin Fleming at the Heart of Clojure last year, and he gave a presentation about how the latest and greatest version of cursive has like the biggest thing it had was inline evaluation.
Hmm.
So you can see the result of your evaluations in the text, which I think Emacs and Vim have had forever. But this was a thing that he did last year, and he was doing some demonstrations about it. And there's some extensibility as well that he's starting to introduce, which is interesting. But the thing that to me is like I'm used to this way you're doing it, David, where you have the REPL on the right hand side
Mm.
and the code on the left hand side, and I kind of like I very rarely use this inline editing, and apparently that's not what the cool kids are doing these days.
I mean, I don't even know. Like, I don't know what's going to happen because let's see what happens. Yeah, I think I didn't turn it on here, but in a different editor, I think I have it on. I think you can use it. I'm pretty sure you can use it at the same time as the regular REPL. And
Yeah, you
actually,
can.
it's
Yeah, you can.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's actually nice when you do that. It's not like it's one or the other. Like sometimes, like at first, I was annoyed by it, but then sometimes I'd be doing something else, be like, what was in that data? And it's nice that the evaluation is still there and I can click through it because maybe it scrolled past in my REPL or
Mm,
whatever,
mm.
or it's like not pretty printed or n number of things that are annoying that could happen in the regular REPL. It is nice to be able to see both. So I was also my initial response was kind of visceral, was like, Like, I've
Old man shouting at the sky.
yeah, I've come around. I think it's actually
Yeah.
it's cool. It's cool. It's again, I want both. I want both things,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, definitely.
I'm no longer against it.
Yeah, it happens in VS Code, and you definitely want both because if it's like a number, it's fine, it fits, right? But if it's
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
17 lines of like deeply nested data
Yeah.
structures, like it's
Yeah,
not.
and the other thing is like, I've worked, I mean, otherwise without it, like for example, I've never been a huge fan of like, people inject into their dev environment like pretty printing of the exceptions or pretty printing of values, and then, somebody doesn't set the knob and it doesn't print after depth five or doesn't print after the first
Right.
100. There's all these things that can
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
feel like inline evaluation is kind of nice for those cases where it's like, yeah, it's this giant dump of stuff. And, it's cool. You can like, you have some navigation into it and that's nice. And it's pretty printed and yada, yada, yada. And, your REPL is kind of left alone. You don't have to hack the REPL.
Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'm warming up to it myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, the only reason I kind of find it sometimes annoying is because if you're running these kind of evaluations and you get a load of, like you were saying, Eric, you get like 20 lines or 50 lines or whatever in the actual REPL, and it's all good. When you come back to the actual text after having examined it in the REPL, you have to press escape a couple of times to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
sort of tedious, but again, I'm used to what I'm used to.
That's right.
So
That's what
binding
happens.
on me, but other things are sort of like you say, if it's small, it's nice, it's very cool. Yeah. And I mean to me, my experience of like IntelliJ, I'm like you, David, I've been using it forever, and but I don't change very much at all. I mean, I almost never, like, people talk about like configuring stuff, and I almost do nothing. I maybe change a
Yeah.
key binding sometimes for like one or two little aspects, like running inline tests. I do that if it's not set up the way I like it. But that's it. Pretty much, I think two or three keystrokes.
Yeah, I've switched back to like my customization. I've switched back to Kinesis. These weird ergonomic keyboards. I had one
Oh
like
yeah.
15 years ago when I was doing a lot of Emacs. I had the Emacs Pinky, and I sort of switched to Kinesis for about 4 years, and then I went back to regular keyboards, and then recently was also experiencing some hand like, oh, I'm starting to get more tired or my hands are hurting. So I switched back to Kinesis. And actually, it's been pretty cool because I was not aware of this whole ZMK thing. I don't know if you all are like ergomech people.
Mm-mm,
Ergomech.
never heard of
So
it.
this
Never heard
is
of it.
so ergomech is this whole like keyboard subculture of like, programming, like building your own keyboards, soldering them. But there's an open source firmware thing called ZMK, which is a kind of a wireless version of something called QMK. But the thing about it is that like I was like, what is this stuff? And this was about 6 months ago, and I got into it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I never thought, like I was like, oh, you can do so many things in your keyboard. It's like unbelievable. So I like a lot of my customization and workflow stuff now is like directly in the hardware on my keyboard. Yeah.
What do you do then?
Whoa.
Give us some
Directly in
examples.
the
Oh, it's the keyboard.
hardware.
Show the keyboard. Show the keyboard.
This one half of it. I have three of these now, and one of them has no
Oh,
key, has blank keycaps. I have three of them.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's
but
hard mode.
so the one cool thing is it has layers, and so the layers stack. So what's really nice is that normally when you're trying to program your keyboard, maybe you have like combos or whatever. But here I can hold down a modifier and I can stack a layer. It can be like any place where I
Mm.
haven't set a binding, it actually maps that layer on top, and it's recursive. Like, so it's like lists. So you can actually like have layers keep mapping onto different parts of the keyboard depending on what you're doing. So for example, like sometimes I want to type one-handed. So if I hold down spacebar with one finger, my thumb, then every single key on one side gets mirrored to the other side. So I have every key on one half of the keyboard just by holding down space. So that means I can type one-handed. So that's like a cool trick. That's actually an old idea. From like the 90s. There was a one-handed keyboard for people who actually had a hand injury on one side. So this was
Right,
like
right.
for people who had hand injuries, they could only type one-handed. So it was this idea you hold down a modifier and the entire keyboard mirrors. And actually, there's a very weird brain thing, which is that they sort of proved through like empirical evidence that your brain is actually wired this way. Like the mirroring is not that hard. Like in your
Whoa.
brain, in your brain, you already know where the mirror is going to be, even though
So
you're
like
doing it on one hand.
I would hit it with my pinky on my left
Yeah,
hand. I
yeah,
could
yeah.
hit it with my pinky on the right hand with no
It's
relearning.
no, it requires relearning for sure, but not nearly as much as they thought it would. It's not a
Uh-huh.
full retraining. It's not a full retraining.
Uh-huh.
There's already something going on in your head that allows this to work.
Wow.
Um, so anyway, so you could do that. So I can flip the entire keyboard by holding a key. For example, I started getting really draconian about using my pinkies. I really want to stay on the home row. So like you can do two key combos. So like I have Command Alt Shift, not on their own, not on pinky keys or on thumb keys. I can just press two fingers down at the same time on a specific
Right.
place, and I can get the modifiers. And all of it is just like less movement, less stretching,
Hmm.
less weird stuff.
Sure,
Which
based on what you use a lot, and you can
that's
just
right.
move it to where you want it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
So
I had pain in my wrists. I often
yeah,
get it, especially if I'm on a laptop keyboard, because like I rest my wrist on the edge and it like
Hmm.
cuts, rubs. But I started and I was writing my book, so it's like a lot of typing. So I got this keyboard that's also split, and it had thumb keys for the modifiers. So you just like do this to like find the modifier,
yeah.
right?
Is it the Moonlander or was
No,
it
it's the it's called the M1. You want to see
M1?
it?
Okay. Yeah,
I'll
yeah. Let me
I'll
see.
grab it. I'll keep talking while I grab it. It's right over here. So
No.
the other thing was it had palm keys. I'll show you
Okay.
what they look like. Right.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I do know that one. I
It's
do know that one.
wooden.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, the
And
M1. Yeah.
see, these are the thumb
Hmm.
modifiers, right? And there, shift alt, there's a space bar, there's just a little button and
Yeah.
control. And then this is the palm key. It's mapped normally to FN, but you can make it anything you want. And if you press it, you can go to the next layer.
Yeah.
So you can still type, but your wrist is kind of pressing on that part. And I liked it. It took a little bit of retraining because, you know, I mean, there was things where I had bad habits where I would like reach for the B with my left hand, even though you're supposed
Yeah.
to use the right hand, and
Yeah.
um, eh, or something that's probably not right, but something like that. But I got pretty fast with it. The problem that I had with it was it just transferred the pain into my shoulders. Uh,
Yeah.
Ah.
it was like my wrists were fine now, but now I'm like I don't know. I just my tension went into my shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I never used, I mean, again, this like all ergomex stuff, the like ortholinear layouts and all this stuff. But I mean, I'm partial to the Kinesis because it has it's contoured.
Hmm.
They have, you can get that now. Like, I think it's called the Glove 80. The Glove 80 is like a company that there's like a model called the Glove 80 that also has contoured stuff. But yeah, I agree. I mean, one thing that I've learned, the most important thing you can do is not type.
Ah.
I mean, it's the most important thing I can do to like keep my hands okay. It's like breaks, not typing.
Yeah, take breaks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Also,
I
if you're
mean,
not coding, you're not creating bugs. So
yeah.
also the most powerful way to avoid bugs.
so we have a question from someone watching, and it's I mean, I think they're right. They're asking if it would be possible if you could show us like how you develop Clojure script. Like, is there any kind of workflow thing that you do Um,
I mean, no, I mean my methods are extremely primitive. Like here, I'm working on this thing. I've been working on this thing for a while, but it's been a bit slow because I've had a couple of bad ideas and I had to throw things out. But um, like we have this thing called externs inference, where, for example, you want to use a foreign library, right? There's some foreign thing, and we need to generate externs for you. This is like a feature that has been around. I mean, honestly, it started with when Maria Geller, like Google Summer of Code, and this might be 2016, might be earlier.
mm,
Um, she started working on this, and it was an idea that I was like, hey, if you want, this is a great little project for Google Summer of Code. And it went pretty far. And again, there's a version of it in Shadow, which is pretty nice. And ClojureScript has, a version. But there are definitely things about it. There's like bugs and edge cases that have recently appeared due to bug reports. And so I'm trying to refactor it. And, so honestly, it's just tests. I mean, what I do is
yeah.
there are test namespaces for all this stuff. So there's a test where it's like, here, can I go, is this going to work? Presentation. Let's see if this works for you all. Presentation mode. Is it working?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So like here, I have this like prefix. It's like a prefix. Like you say that something is a JS/foo. Well, the prefix is foo. We load up the externs and we say, in this externs file, this test.js does have like an extern in there. And we want to know that if it appears in the source code, do we match it with what was in the file? So we have tests for that. Or for example, we have like, can we find number is nan? And then there's things around type inference. So when we actually look at the externs, we store all the type information that we found in the externs, like was it an array type, or is it a string type, or is it a number, or is it a function? Or if you're looking at the console global, that's the type of that is console, right?
Hmm.
And you need to know all this stuff to mostly for type inference reasons. So internally, we use it for that, but also to generate good externs. Like it's only the externs that are actually needed by the user's code. But yeah, that's and I honestly I just write little comment blocks. I evaluate some code. I try it in the REPL, and it works, and then I convert that into a test. I mean, ClojureScript development really isn't any. It's like I was working on a web app. It's really the same.
Yeah, yeah.
So what I want to know
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
you have one org mode file uh that's just called clojurescript.org.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
file, and how long is that
I
file?
think I got rid of a lot of stuff. I mean, I cleaned it up, but actually, I've started like it's really cool. Org mode has like an archive mode, and I've tried to be better about archiving versus deleting. Like I have everything in Git. Like all my notes are in Emacs are in Git, and I'll show that. So
So
if
that's
I
what I'm wondering is like is
yeah
the
yeah yeah
entire history of everything that was ever like thought of in ClojureScript, is it in this file?
No, 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 no. I don't think so. But there is a lot of stuff in here. I mean, if you go back pretty far, though, I think I've deleted things. Like, yeah. So on the back burner, this has been like around forever. Generic math, and like I'm talking about Dart. Like this is like I probably wrote this like in 2016. I don't know. There's like a rest defend bug that's been around since the beginning, but I'm always like not we're wanting to work on it because it's super annoying. It's like people who want to like pass more than 20 arguments, right?
Uh,
Like technically there's definitely cases where that kind of works, but there's definitely cases where it doesn't work. And like I have notes about how that could work. But again, it's like, dude, come on, don't It's like not enough people complain about it.
mm, mm.
Yeah, and then like there's old let's see, like, yeah, and like I can never remember how to filter files in Jira. I'm like like notes to myself, how do I filter issues in Jira? Um yeah, like this is really old. This is like how to manually run the Google Clojure release build. So there's like notes and like like I can never remember how to do anything with Maven. So I have like this thing. Like I don't know how I found this. I probably found this in Stack Overflow. I would never find it again. I want to run one test with Maven. Um, yeah, weird notes about like JavaScript core. I don't even like. I was like, I don't even know what I was trying to do there.
Do
Yeah.
you
What?
do you ha I see some code in there. Do you actually have it like export the code or anything fancy that people
No,
do?
no, 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 no. But you, it's like yes, but like org mode has like you can embed snippets and you can state the file format and then you know you'll get all the mode specific editing in
Yeah.
that
Oh,
snippet.
that's
So
so
that's
nice.
pretty cool. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. It's very useful. Um there's ways to hook up like eval and repls to org mode. I did it at one point, but honestly now I really just use it for reminding myself how to do things and taking notes. But Mia, that's a great question. I mean, clearly there's some old stuff in here. I mean, this is definitely like going
Like
into the
I
attic.
noticed it wasn't
Going to
I noticed it
and
wasn't versioned. It was
no,
just
no,
called
it's like
clojurescript.org. I was
yeah,
like,
yeah. So
how
it's like
long?
it's really long, it's really old stuff, and all the old stuff's at the bottom, and anything I'm working on is at the top.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a stratigraphic organization.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And so like the other thing is like I don't know if you all use gosh, what was it called? There was this note-taking tool, which is really cool where you just start typing. So I use this thing called Deft, and it's like I have all these org mode files and I can switch between them. So like whatever, like sick notes, chapter 5. I don't know why I have that there, but like yeah, or anything. Um, I can just I can issue a command. I have different org mode files all in one Git repo, and I edit it, I change it, and then I use Magit or Magit or whatever you will call it, the Git mode for Emacs, right?
hmm You just
And
commit it whenever you
yeah,
make a change.
and I have this on every machine that I work on. I have access to this org
That's
mode
awesome.
repo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So thanks for sharing all this. Um, I think it's time to ask you the next question, which is like, what is your closure story?
Gosh, my closure story is pretty. It definitely starts before I came to New York. I was like living in Austin. I just finished film school, but I decided I wanted to be like a bum and like be in a rock and roll band. And
Nice.
at some point, I was like, well, I should go back to school and learn something again. And I sort of set my sights on like going to get a new media degree. But I did have like did quite a bit of programming when I was a kid. And I was really interested in this gentleman, John Maeda, and he was teaching at MIT at the time. He was sort of like an experimental digital artist, an early one of sort of the new wave of sort of late or no, really early 90s, maybe even late 80s. He was doing stuff on Macs. But anyways, he was at MIT. He had this group called Aesthetics and Computation. You all know processing, right? Processing.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yep.
So it's his team that created processing. So like Casey Reas and Ben Fry were John Maeda's students. And they were doing this stuff at the Media Lab, and I was interested in their program, and I was like, what did John Maeda study at MIT? And now, of course, it was Scheme. That was what everybody studied at MIT before. And so I got structure interpretation of computer programs, and I read it, and for me, that was like really mind blowing because I was coming, from as a kid, I'd only done basic Pascal, C and C++. And so that was like my Algol centric view of the world, right? That's all I really knew. And then this whole scheme thing really like threw me for a loop because in the book, they show you how to build an object system from scratch. They show you how to build an interpreter. They show you how to alter an interpreter. And then, so that like got me going on the Lisp thing. And then I was like, this is amazing. This is the most amazing thing I've ever tried. And then I was like, who's gonna pay me to do this? And then I was like, nobody's there are not many jobs for scheme
God damn
programmers.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so I got into processing though, because again, to the John Maeda connection, I picked up some Java because I was interested in processing. When I went to school, I focused on like Objective-C and C++ and C and Java at grad school. And then I did odd jobs with JavaScript. I got really good at JavaScript doing odd jobs for people.
Hmm.
And then I took like a 3 month sabbatical. It was between gigs, between my JavaScript gigs. And it was like Hacker News and like, Paul Graham was talking about Common Lisp and like Arc. And I was like, hey, that's cool. And so I got some books on Common Lisp and I messed around with Common Lisp and I was like, oh, like I wasn't familiar with Common Lisp. Scheme was neat, but I was like, oh, other they'd already, there were Lisp programmers who were interested in the industrial software problem, and Common Lisp was more in that vein, where Scheme was always a little bit academic. And I didn't realize that until, that summer, that Common Lisp was an industrial sort of Lisp that was, cool. I had like a Common Lisp app running on a slice host. That was like pretty odd. That was like that was before AWS. Like, it was like
Mm-hmm.
slice host, right? And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, I can run whatever programming language I want in the cloud. And then but Common Lisp was like had such a small community. The people that used it were really ornery and very rude and generally
Yeah, they
I
were.
don't know, ill-behaved. And then, and there just wasn't that many documentation on how to do anything. And then I found Clojure randomly. It was totally random. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, cool. It runs in the JVM. I wonder how hard it is going to be used. I downloaded the jar and there was a one-liner. It was like a one-liner. I was like, oh my God. I just downloaded a jar and I have a REPL. And that took me literally like 30 seconds. And I was sold. I was like, that's all I had to do. I mean, that's something that people forget. I mean, people can't really remember that. This is like 2008. Now we have, whatever build tool you want to do and yada, 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 yada. But, in 2008, it was literally download a jar and you start a
Hmm.
REPL and you could do whatever you wanted. And that was it. And that was totally awesome. There were no steps. Step one, that's it, done. So that sold me. That really sold me on Clojure. And I did some fun little early projects with processing with it. And then I got on the IRC channel and I loved interacting on the IRC channel. I didn't know anything. Like, it was definitely there were a lot of Christoph Graham was already there, Chris Hauser was there, Focus was there, Stuart Sierra, Stuart Holloway. I mean, all the people that are like well known in the community that wrote books and stuff, they were there. So I was like lurking for like a long time on the mailing list and in IRC. And I like the community. I think Rich, he was very involved in the beginning, always around every day. He'd like sometimes he'd wake up at 5 a.m. and he'd be like, sign on, like I have a new idea or try this out. Everything was in Subversion. It was before Clojure was on Git. Um,
Git
so it
was
was just
pretty new at that point.
yeah. So it was just a really cool, small group of people. And then I went to the first Conj, I think was in 2009. I think it was 2009.
Oh, cool.
And I was there at the first con, and I didn't know anybody. I literally went, and then I didn't talk to anyone. I
Oh
didn't
no.
know anyone. I was just like went, and I was like, okay, that's Chris Hauser, that's Christoph Grant. I was like, so I
It's
saw these
like
people.
bird watching, like, okay, no, this
Yeah, I know this guy. I know this guy. Yeah. So that was just like I was just like, oh, it's just a community of smart, nice people, and that got my enthusiasm up. And then of course I became much more involved when ClojureScript came out because that was a chance for me to, I don't know, contribute something, right? Because I wasn't really like a JVM expert. I knew about the JVM. I could do interesting things with the JVM, but really, in terms of like where I had built up a lot of expertise because it was just my job was JavaScript stuff. Like I just knew like a lot of stuff about JavaScript and web browsers. And when ClojureScript came along, I was really excited because I was like, um, I feel like that was not like it wasn't like I would say that the Clojure community at the time wasn't like very big on JavaScript, right? They were more or
Mm.
less coming from like a back end JVM background.
Yeah.
So it was an opportunity for me to like, you know, contribute and then over time, help build a community and enthusiasm around, using, Clojure script for doing Clojure like things, but targeting, places where, JavaScript's the only option.
Sure. I remember when ClojureScript was first announced. It was 2011, right?
Yep.
It
Yep.
just seemed like so late in the sense of like I had been using Clojure since 2008 and like 3 years later but now it seems like forever ago, and I mean, they're kind of like the same age almost. There's only
Yeah.
3 years
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You're right. I mean, in that sense, yeah. I mean, but things that, at the time though, it was the Wild West. Like
It
like
really was.
I mean,
Even for the
2000,
web, like,
it
go
was
ahead, sorry.
completely the Wild West. I mean, Chrome was recent, V8 was recent.
Mhm, mhm,
Node.js was 2009.
mhm,
People were still using Bower.
And
Like
jQuery was like
jQuery was
normal.
still totally normal. I mean, it's still totally normal. It's
Yeah,
still totally normal. Nothing has changed about that. But I'm just saying that, like, in terms of how people were developing for the web, I mean, it's just nothing like it is now. It's
right.
nothing like how people do it today.
Maybe there's one question, David, which I noticed in your thing, your org mode thing was about Google Clojure, releasing Google Clojure. And obviously that was a big choice at the time, which is we're going to invest in Google Clojure because Google's a big company, it's putting the money behind it, it's putting the engineers behind it. And I think for a long time that, it felt like, well, Google Clojure is a bit sort of like from a JavaScript perspective, it's off. It's a bit off. It's not like there aren't many JavaScript developers with this technology, but it seemed very solid and very kind of like, industrial strength, let's say. But now it's kind of like, it feels like it's game over. Is that right? I mean, do you feel like it's sort of like now it's sort of running out of road, or it's just going to be there and just like stick around? 'Cause,
I mean, it's
the
not going
bet, the
anywhere.
bet, yeah,
It's,
but I
it's
mean,
not really going anywhere, but we forked it. We actually forked it because they're not
okay,
pushing
didn't know
change. They're
that.
not,
Yeah,
yeah,
I know that. Yeah,
they're
yeah,
not pushing changes to it anymore.
yeah.
But that's actually not that important. I mean, I don't know if how much you all pay attention to the JavaScript world, but I mean, the tide, like the JavaScript world, the tide is always turning back the way we were, back in the direction we were already revisited, like already like two times now.
Yeah.
Um, but the way things are heading is like now people have been on TypeScript for a long time, and like some people are getting sick of TypeScript. People are definitely sick of bundle sizes, but that's got nothing to do with
Mm.
anything other than like self-inflicted stuff, right? It's just the
Mm,
way that like
mm,
it's just the way they do development. So that's like a self-inflicted thing. But I think finally people are like tired of it. It's like, yeah, why should I have so many things in my dependencies? Why is my bundle so big? But it's because people just don't manage that stuff. And the libraries don't manage it, and therefore it's easy to pull in a lot of things when all you want is like a date picker, right? It's just
mm,
very
mm,
easy for that to happen.
mm,
So it's funny because I think things have really come full circle there where people are looking, like I'm looking at interesting libraries that I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And people are like vendorizing things now. Like they're like, it's like there's
mm,
zero
mm.
dependencies. Their library has
Right.
zero dependencies on anything they didn't
Yeah.
handpick. Um,
Mm.
People are getting fed up, and like I'm like seeing libraries like this back to CDNs and there's a script tag. You want to use a library? Here's a CDN and a script tag. It's like, yes, because that was better. It was better
Yeah,
that
it
way.
was better. I remember
It's skittle. Yeah.
back in 2011, I was working for a company.
Wow.
Like we didn't use any of the build systems. There were some, Bower and Gulp and stuff, but we
Yeah.
just catted a directory full
Mm.
of JavaScript file. Like we would version it, I mean, sorry, vendor it. We just download a copy, put it in a directory, and that was the version that we used. And then you
Yeah.
just cat them all together into a big JavaScript blob, and that
That's
was your
it.
build process.
That was it. We did that. I'm not saying that everything is perfect about that, but there's definitely a
Simple.
lot of there's definitely a lot of fatigue. There's a
Yeah.
fatigue because it's definitely really complicated. When it maybe you're willing to put up with some complications, but I think it's definitely past the threshold. Um, Bringing it back to Google Clojure and Clojure Script, I mean, something that for me, it's like, my blog is still up there, and like everything I made on my blog was done with no dependencies. Like every blog post where I was talking about Clojure Script, the only thing I used was Clojure Script and Google Clojure. And it's like for most of the simple interactive things that you're going to do on the web, I actually think that Clojure Script comes out of the box with enough stuff. As long as, yeah, you have to read some docs, but almost everything is there for you to do, like add simple interactivity to a website the way you would have
Hmm.
done with JavaScript. You don't need to use
Hmm.
anything fancy or do anything fancy. You don't need to pull in npm. Like, I feel people are just like are like trained to like go grab stuff versus being like ClojureScript more or less has the basics for typical things. I also think that there's an opportunity for the ClojureScript community for this thing where it's like you're a single developer. We could easily maintain Google Clojure and write new things, new libraries, new things, right? And it's like you just want to like have a thing that will be dead code perfectly, and like we can add a library that's just like
Mm.
written in JavaScript that just provides this very nice, clean, high performance thing, right? That anybody can use, and it integrates well. And
Mm.
I think that like I've said this before in many in many contexts, but like one day I think one day people will wake up and say, yes, that is a great idea. So like ClojureScript by itself is all that you actually need, and maybe a
Mhm.
little bit of JavaScript, maybe a little bit of JavaScript um, that needs to be written. So that's one thing to think about. There's also I am now interested in. I don't know if you've like like I recently became aware. I mean, I've been sort of like not interested in most web things because I don't think that much of the stuff that's happening on the web is very interesting. But I recently got reinterested again. There's this whole like not the specifics, but some technologies around it. This is actually thanks to Christoph Brand. Christoph Brand retweeted something. There was a blog post recently about this thing that's like game of life on the web, like real time, multi-user game of life on the web. No closure script, and it was using this like an HTMX style approach. Are you all familiar with
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
HTMX?
Hmm.
Yeah, like this sort of like hypermedia thing. But I feel like that plus like some of the things that this particular demo used with like server sent events and like doing this thing I wasn't familiar, but this whole like uh the this for people that want to set in their HTML but want to do it intelligently, they have this thing called morphing. So set in, because React they call it diffing because you're doing it on the client. But now they
Mm.
have this thing where the server, instead of when the server sends a fragment or the server sends the whole page, because it's not happening, it's like a difference between what the server sent and what the client has. They call that morphing, but it's conceptually the same. But it's really interesting to me to see that old way of like setting inner HTML is now being combined with the React way of diffing. And actually, I think that this idea is worth exploring because, I mean, what's neat about that is that you could have a very minimal amount of front end code. And actually, most of your programming for doing the UI work could be just on the back end. And that's cool. That is simpler. Like, it's like, that's
Yeah.
definitely simpler to be able to,
Definitely.
definitely simpler to be able to do more things in the back end when doing um, UI stuff versus managing state in two places. I mean, that's the thing that I think nobody really liked that, but
Mm,
it's
mm.
kind of like what's the alternative? But I think there is something interesting about this sort of like um HTMX style plus like some sort of service and events. I also think this approach is now more interesting because like with virtual threads, right? You could imagine that it's
Mm.
not that hard to set up a thing with
Just one
virtual
Mm.
thread
threads.
per session or something.
One virtual thread, right?
Yeah.
One virtual thread. You have a client and
Yeah.
like it's just a virtual thread that responds and sends a fragment. So I think that like things are actually in a place where I'm like, okay, there is a new model that learned something from React that could be more hybrid instead of
Hmm.
Mm.
being all, it's like all in the back end, all in the front end. I think that there's kind of like lessons to be learned from both approaches now.
Yeah. I think the browsers became a lot more capable as well over the last 20
Yeah.
years, you know? So you can afford to have less code there and just exploit the capabilities of the browser itself, you know? Which is, again, a lot of these things, they just take time to sort of settle down and work out. That
So,
there's a lot of
David,
investment in that. Yeah.
um,
Sorry.
yeah, no, sorry to interrupt you, Ray. But I had a question for David. Um, I've seen many of your talks at the closure conferences, and one thing that you became known for in your talks was taking a paper and implementing it as a library. You did it several times, and I guess I wonder. Um, So I felt a lot of kinship with that because I like to do that too. And I always felt like if I had to do this in Java, if I had to implement this paper in Java, I just would not do it. But Clojure, like in a couple hundred lines, you did it, right? Like it's pretty straightforward usually to go from whatever mathematical notation they were using in the paper or um, or whatever abstractions they're building. Like you can just build it in Clojure. Do you still do that? Like, do you still find old papers or old, new, whatever, any kind of papers, and do you still implement them? Um, is that a thing?
I mean, I don't. I mean, I feel like it's like, pre having a kid, you have lots of free time to
Mm,
do to like sit around and look at
Jeez,
stuff
for
like that.
sure. Yeah.
But I have less time for that. But also, again, I think that I was always mostly, I mean, to be honest, like, yeah, I do think it's the papers thing is important, but it's also like, I mean, I feel like I mostly was relatively, I mean, some things were like a little bit esoteric, especially in the beginning, was like, yeah, I was very interested in Prolog. I don't know how useful that was, but I learned a lot, and actually, it did inform my thinking later. But maybe that was a bit more pie in the sky. But a lot of the other things were like practical, like learning about pattern matching or reading a bit about compilers, or like there was some immediate application that I was looking for.
Mm,
Um, and I would say for my day to day, to be honest, I don't know that I've seen anything that I think would have a radical impact on my work where I would like want to go look at it, though for various reasons. I was recently interested in lenses and some of the theory around lenses, so I did look at that a little bit. So I still do that, but as far as like is there anything besides like looking at lenses that I really looked at? I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean there is, with this like this new like approach that's like this like sort of like hypermedia approach, sort of like I don't know how you call it, real-time hypermedia approach. I am interested in things like, I that would probably get me curious about literature around like games. I think games, like, there's a problem there in my opinion, which is that, like, I mean, I don't know, those people, the people that are doing that type of thing seem to not have a great answer for optimistic updates, but there are definitely like cases where you just want that for
yeah.
various reasons for the user experience. And like, I feel like the whole hypermedia approach doesn't really have a great story. But I wonder if there isn't like something already in the gaming literature around this, right? You have like multiple participants, you have network latency. You
Right.
actually you cannot wait for something. You
Right.
cannot
You have
wait for
to
something.
shoot the
They're
bullet
playing
now when they
they're
press the
playing
key.
they're playing a game, right?
Yeah.
And I think that like pretending that it's not a problem is just, it's typical. I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
want to be mean, but I think it's a little bit there's a little bit of hubris there that
Yeah.
you might that this problem isn't important. And I feel like that there's probably some interesting reading to be done around this. And I feel like you could probably find an interesting new, hopefully not too complicated algorithm for making that work and maybe package it up as a library, right? You want to be able to um, have the simplified programming model, but you would like users to benefit from optimistic updates. That
You know
seems like
that
an area, something to read and look up, and something I would be interested in.
the
Go ahead.
the heart of that is this tick server, by the way. You know, all
What
these
is
like new games like Valorant and stuff like this. They use well, tick servers are where game engines basically
Mhm.
provide coordinated time. So they have a like 120 ticks a second or something, which is the highest standard. Usually it's like 60 ticks a second, which it seems incredibly slow, you know. But it gives you that kind of coordinated time because that's one of the biggest problems
Yeah.
is what they call like peaker's advantage, where you have to make sure that someone can't see you coming around a corner
because they have
and
lower
then take a
latency or
shot.
something.
They have low latency, and so you have to coordinate it. So it's definitely multiple things. The other thing, by the way, David, we did something at work when we worked together on sparse trees, which was a paper.
Oh yeah. That's you're right. We did sparse Merkle trees. Yeah. So
Yeah, sparse Merkle trees.
yeah. So I did
Yeah,
look. You're right. I forgot about that.
yeah.
Forgot about that. Yeah, I mean, I did sparse Merkle trees. I looked a bit into that. I did look into, I did some stuff around property-based testing, stateful property-based testing, and I looked at the papers for that. So I definitely am still interested. I'm not like, there's always a benefit if there's a good match with work, then I'll like at least double check that I'm not like, completely doing something dumb or reinventing the wheel.
So what is it about Clojure that makes it appealing uh to, I mean, you talked about getting interested in Scheme and then Common Lisp and now Clojure. Like what, if you could name the thing, what is it?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I feel like people have been doing Clojure for a long time. I think all have like a similar sort of story, which is like, I mean, my day-to-day work is like I just write some functions. I like, think a bit about the data, and then it's like that's it. And like when something looks really nice, it's like, yeah, there were some good functions, some good names, and some well-organized namespaces, and that's
Good
a good
day's work.
feeling. It is. It is.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and I feel like it's great. I mean, to be honest, I still think that the appeal for me is that it's a relatively low ceremony
Mm.
language, and I definitely feel like you've been doing it a while. Like you're working on a problem, and you already sort of have the functions you need, and you already have the pipeline of functions you're going to use. You're like, oh yeah, and like that's really nice, and I think it's very clean. And like whenever I sit down to write, of course, do anything in any other language now, I mean, most languages don't have such a strong set of like functional transformations.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean that's like anytime I'm sitting down in a language, it's like, oh my God, you're gonna make me write all this stuff. Like
Yeah.
I have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
write
yeah.
all this, I have to write all this
Yeah.
stuff. I don't want to write all this stuff, And I think the thing that people don't understand is like, people talk about performance and like, the thing about it is that what I love about Clojure is like Clojure is not slow, but at the same time, I feel like Clojure is so pragmatic. It's like for most of the things that we're doing, these functional transformations are the right thing. They're semantically clear. They perform
Mm.
well enough, and bam, you spend a short amount of time, and now you get to
Mm,
go outside and play with your kids.
that's
It's
right.
like
Yeah, yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Like
Oh,
I in my newsletter I ran this closure challenge. It would be a problem saying, write this in Clojure, and I would take them from challenges for other languages, like, it'd be from Ruby or JavaScript or Java, where it was like considered really hard, and people would answer it. A lot of people would answer it, and it'd be like one line enclosure. And
yeah.
it's the right line, you got to get
Mm,
it right.
mm.
Maybe it's two lines, but it just wasn't that hard. And it turns out like often it's something like, well, it's really just about counting. And because we have frequencies, like you're 90% of the way there. You just gotta
Yeah.
Mm,
like
mm.
take it out of the frequencies and then put it in another format. And but
I
in
gotta, I gotta, I
in
gotta. Sorry, I gotta answer the
oh,
door really quick. Is that
okay.
okay?
Yeah, sure.
I'll
Yeah,
be
yeah,
right
yeah.
back.
Well,
We do have a lot of questions in the chat.
yeah,
We'll have to try and get to them quickly because we need to be respectful of David's time.
respectful, yes.
Yeah. It's
Um,
already we're already near an hour, I think.
yeah, I mean, it's okay. Sometimes you all go over, yeah.
Yeah.
All
I'm
Sure.
right.
Yeah.
fine going over if you are.
No, I don't mind. I like no, not 2 hours, but I can. I'm happy to answer some questions. There's lots of questions I can answer. Questions.
All right, let's start with the fast one. Are you still
Yeah.
playing
Sorry.
any shogi or go from Focus?
Go. Yeah, I play a lot of Go, but I still have my teacher, but it's like I feel like I've reached this point where like I need to practice more. I mean, like anything, it's just practice. I have been improving, but is I feel like I'm also in the moment of I don't know. So for this is like I think very familiar to people with very serious hobbies. Like if you're like a mountain climber or you're like a biker or you're like into croquet or whatever, or you're into crocheting, there's a moment where you realize, oh, if I want to get past a plateau of some kind, you have to sort of dismantle, like maybe you build up some like assumptions and like some bad
You
habits.
start over. You just
You
rebuild
you
your
you,
game.
you you kind of have to rebuild your game, and I'm in the process. You know, it's the thing. It's like the other thing. It's like it's really humbling because it's like I like to think that I'm more malleable or that I'm able to change quicker. And playing goes and like, oh no, you've got a lot of bad habits and a lot of bad ideas. And so
Hmm.
that's actually why I keep at it. I find it to be very humbling. It's also great because that I don't know, it's definitely, I mean, reminds me that persistence is more important. Persistence, dedication is more important than, I don't know,
Talent.
like the smart talent or the smarts, right? Like, and then that there is an emotional side to it. It's like and then you keep pushing through, and then eventually you get to the other side, and that feels really great.
Where do you play?
Actually, I only play online, and I have a class. I have a teacher. I have a class, and so I play online.
Hmm.
Um, I do try to play in person if I can, but that's challenging because that's like it's just like there's a club in Brooklyn, but like it's not very often I can go. I love it. There's some really great people. There's a great community in New York now. It's really gotten a lot better in the past 5 years. But yeah, I love Go. Go is awesome. It's definitely my still my favorite game. Um, yeah.
Cool.
Um, let's see. Any chance of ClojureScript freeing itself of JVM dependencies, implemented only in JavaScript ClojureScript? The idea
Oh,
being making ClojureScript as convenient as TypeScript.
there is. I mean, we have bootstrapped ClojureScript. You can bootstrap ClojureScript and use it. At the same time, I mean, the thing that I think people who maybe are coming at more from the JavaScript perspective is that a lot of ClojureScript users are Clojure users. And if they're doing backend services, they're most likely going to be doing Clojure in the backend. I also think that the calculus around the JVM has changed dramatically with virtual threads. Like,
Mm.
people used to go like async versus like threads and yada yada yada. And I think that argument's kind of like dead now with virtual threads, since you can basically write these straight line programs, but more or less take advantage of sort of a really highly asynchronous model. Um, so it's just my opinion. Like I would use Clojure on the back end. Like, so that's the thing. It's like we could bootstrap Clojure script, but it's hard to see much benefit to the existing user base. People have bootstrapped it and it never really took off. There was like various bootstrapped versions that people were like, keeping going and maybe adding some things to. But it just never we never saw that much traction. And I think it's because of these other points that I've mentioned. Hopefully that makes it clear. I'm not saying it's not like it's a terrible idea. I just don't think there's enough momentum in the community to make that really,
Right. I
take
mean,
off.
the idea that it would be like some increment more convenient might make more people use it, but I think what you're saying is like most people aren't looking like they're already using Clojure, so like it's not more convenient.
And I definitely think
That's
there
not
are
the
things like,
barrier.
and if you bootstrapped it in JavaScript, the thing is that I know JavaScript and I know it pretty well. And I've done React Native apps. I did a whole hog on JavaScript ecosystem, and I think that like I think people's impression of it being a relatively challenging thing to do serious work with is true. It's like, I mean, to me, I find it a little bit like funny because people complained about Java and like Java tooling, and it's like I had never imagined it'd be possible, but they definitely JavaScript tooling to me has exceeded anything that I ever witnessed ever in the Java community. It is much more complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, all right. One more, and then I think we should wrap up. What was the last non-programming related book that you read?
Mm.
Oh, last non-programming book. I mean, I was reading a lot of things. I mean, the one that I enjoyed the most was this really, I mean, for me, it was a shock, was this book by, I can't remember, what's her name? There's this book called Breasts and Eggs. Have you all heard of this book? Breasts and Eggs by, I mean, it was big, yeah, Mieko Kawakami. Um, and it's about this sort of poor Japanese woman who decides that she wants to have a baby without having a partner via IVF. But it's actually she's writing about something that is definitely kind of a small community of things that is happening in Japan, like people who don't want to have romantic relationships, but they want to have children. Um, but for me, it was it's an incredible book because just the way it's written, and it's about a thing I didn't know anything about. I think it's very easy to identify with. The book really took off in Japan as being like a very powerful feminist text. Um, but for me, I was like, it's just an incredible story. It's just an incredible story about a human. So yeah, that was definitely the best book I'd read in like for me, 3 or 4 years. A lot of people hate it. A lot of people hate this book. I mean, like if you go on Goodreads, people are like, this book sucked. Why did you tell me to read it? But for me, I don't know if you like I'm really into literature. I'm really into writing, and I just thought her writing was so beautiful. I thought her characters were incredible. Um, yeah, I mean, I devoured it. It was just such a beautiful book.
There must have been such I'd love to like I want to read it now and I want to hear about the translation process for it because I'm looking her up now and she cites Lydia Davis and James Joyce as influences, but of course she's writing in Japanese, right? So presumably it is Lydia Davis and James Joyce translated into Japanese that are influencing her. And then how would those influences get reflected back out from Japanese into the English translation that you read,
I mean,
correct?
I mean, the translation was very good. I just thought her writing was on a different level entirely. I'm very rarely that I'm shocked by a person's ability to write, and I was shocked. I mean, it's just so incredible. I mean, it's all about being poor. Her whole life is about being a poor person in Japan, and she tells these stories, and all the stories are like each story that's being told immediately melts into another story that's being told, and then it sort of unravels. It's really great. I mean, for me, like if you like books, I think you would love this book. It is so good. The rest of you also might like it. I recommend it. Even if you don't like it, I think you'll get something out of it. It's really, really, really good.
I read a Diary of a Void, uh, which is kind of really so it's another Japanese novelist, and the character is a she gets mistaken for being pregnant, and then she has to like carry out the ruse of her pregnancy because people are being nice to her and giving her like she's getting benefits out of it. She like makes her first real friend out of like having to pretend to be pregnant. And it gets a little bit surreal, right, as she like gives birth to the idea of the child. But it's kind of a similar theme, but in the other direction, it sounds like. So it's by Amy Yagi, I think.
Miyagi. Is that a contemporary work as well, like recent?
Yeah, it like just came out.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Okay.
yeah,
Cool.
but
I will check. I'll check it out. I am always looking for book recs.
Is there anything else you'd like to plug, David?
Anything else? I'm sure there is, but I don't know. I always draw blanks when I'm on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
You published a testing framework recently, David.
Well, it was the Fugato thing. I mean, that was something that was super useful at Vouch, the property-based testing, specifically because of sort of the blockchain stuff we were doing, Fugato. But that's out. I think there's definitely like a weird like bug that I like did a talk for London Clojurians, but it mostly works, and we used it, and it was very useful. Yeah. I mean, stateful property-based testing, I think, is totally awesome. I definitely think it's like one of these things where it's like, yeah, especially I think in like certain types of systems, it's a very, very useful technique.
And who would you like to see as a guest on Apropos?
Who would I like to see? I mean, I feel like you all are kind of on a roll recently, I've noticed. And like now I'm like drawing a blank because like I was like a bunch of people already went before me. Yeah, I would have to think. I would have to think.
All right,
Yeah.
whose editor do you want to look at?
Yeah.
Who's editor? Do I really want to see somebody's editor? I'm definitely like I'm less. It's like
It's
I re
rude.
I like
I
seeing
mean,
I
I
like
think
seeing people's thought patterns. It's
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, I feel like I've seen so many things, and like everybody has their little things, and I'm always I think it's interesting when people like I would be more interested in, like I'm like show me your keyboard tricks, like I'm less like
Hmm.
Right,
editor these
right.
days.
This is a
Yeah,
new
sure.
twist, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah. I wasn't
yeah,
expecting the keyboard thing.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, this is a great twist, actually. Yeah, this is more food for the next
yeah.
episodes, you know? Yeah.
So who do you think needs more attention by the community?
More attention by the community. Oh, I mean, I suppose. I mean, this is, I think that I don't know. Like, the thing is, like, Clojure's like been around long enough. There's enough people in it, and it's big enough that it's impossible to know what people are doing anymore, and how, you know,
Mm.
and like, sometimes I feel like people are like, maybe the community is like plateaued, but it's so hard to tell, right? Because I definitely think there's this steady influx of people that are like fed up that come from somewhere else. I mean, that happens
Definitely,
with
definitely.
regularity.
Yeah.
Um, I also think that when people get fed up and they see how the community approaches software, whether it's dependency management or like old things that still work, it's like you can find a library and nobody's committed to it in 10 years, but hey, it solves my problem. Cool. And who cares? Um,
Yeah.
I just think we have such a different mentality. And I think that's still extremely valuable. I definitely think that like, yeah, software development has gotten no simpler. You know,
Mm,
now you throw some vibe coding in the mix. Who knows what's going to happen?
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. We live in unfortunately interesting times.
Oh God, yeah.
But I hope that like Clojure continues to be a place that like it's like people care about the craft of the thing, and that that the type of software that we're making is still a bit sharper than you would expect. I don't know. I don't know. I hope that it maintains, like it draws people who are looking for a better way to do their work that isn't about, just automation.
Yeah, I think it stays high
Yeah.
leverage, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really
Cool.
funny. I think there was like, that yeah. Yeah. It's like hopefully he doesn't mind. There was like a law. It was like when I was at Cognitech. Remember, Cognitech was when AlphaGo came out. Remember?
Mm,
And I remember back then, we had a chat, and it was like, Rich at the time was like, he was like, his prediction at the time was like, AI won't win a single one. This was DeepMind versus Lee Sedol. I get this is the thing I gave a talk about Strange Loop, and then of course, AlphaGo won. It was like one, won all of them except for one, and then later they did the one that's like it's fully automated, has no like domain knowledge, right? Alpha
right.
Zero came shortly
Right.
thereafter. And I think, it's like, I think Rich said something to the effect, it's like, we better not continue to squander our time at the wheel. I think that like, it's I think it's a thing we should take seriously. And I think that, there's a lot of stuff about whether it's the complications we accept in our tooling, or whether it's like, a sort of like a less than, I don't know, um, self-reflective usage of like AI in the process. There are all these sorts of things contribute to devaluing something that we do.
Mm,
My hope is that I think programming is great. Programming is awesome. It still brings me a lot of joy, a lot of fun, and that it'd be sad to see this truly what I consider, like, especially maybe now more than ever, truly an art form, right? It's very much is an art form, and that we should it's not like things are going to change for us, but I think that there are important things to try to preserve as our practice evolves.
Wow, what a beautiful note to
Beautiful.
end
Yes,
on.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, David.
Yeah, it's been lovely to have you on. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thanks, David.
Thanks. Bye.
Right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.